Hello everyone and welcome back to Tuesday Night Legacy, where we showcase Magic's most powerful formats. My name is Eugene and I'll be your commentator for this Pauper tournament from May 13th. This is round 1. We have 2 new players on camera, not new to the store of course, just new to the channel. We have Francis on the left playing a red-green Cascade deck, and we have Max S on Esper Familiars on the right. This Cascade deck is based around, obviously, the mechanic Cascade, where you get to cast the spell and get a free spell that is CMC less than it. So this deck uses a lot of mana ramp in Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth to be able to play Value Town creatures that either draw cards when they enter, like Muldrifter or the Packmate, or even the Visionary, or generate mana so that they can play these high-cast Cascade spells like Boarding Party and the Altasaur to get super value and just completely outvalue the opponent. This deck is also a land destruction deck with the Muanvoli Acid Moss, and out of the sideboard, the Thermokarst. So trying to deny mana resources to your opponent that way. Combating that is going to be the Esper Familiars deck on the right here. Now this deck doubles down on the ability of the Familiars, which makes spells cost less to play in the Nightscape Familiar and the Sunscape Familiar. And with that cost reduction, it makes all of these spells that maybe cost just a little bit too much, Soul Manipulation or Recoil or Memory Lapse, just hyper efficient, being able to cast more spells than your opponent. So it also has a lot of card draw in Probe, Consult the Necrosages, and Deep Analysis. And eventually, it wants to get an Archaeomancer on the field with a Ghostly Flicker and a couple of these Sunscape Familiars, and it'll just blink that Archaeomancer, and you can mill out your opponent with the Sage's Row Denizen. So we have a Value Town deck versus a Control deck. Let's get the game started. We have Francis on the play here, starting out with just a Utopia Sprawl. He uses energy to dictate what color mana that Utopia Sprawl is generating. So we see here this one's tapping for blue and green. And just a preordain from Max, a Jeweled Thief coming out here, making a treasure, allowing Francis, if he has a land drop here, to have 5 mana on turn 3. Max not doing a ton, just putting that bounce land into play. Can't really do anything else besides that. We see a hard-casted Muldrifter, getting to draw 2 extra cards here. That Jewel Thief, not only making a treasure token, but actually has fairly relevant text and butt here. 3/3 Vigilance Trample. So Francis now can start crashing in for 5 damage each turn, basically turning the game into a 4-turn clock if he didn't do anything else. Max thinking about casting Recoil here, which he did. Recoil returning that card to his hand and forcing him to discard. Discarding just a land out of the hand, Francis didn't really mind and was able to generate a treasure by recasting the Jewel Thief. So only 2 damage for the turn. But now at the 3-turn clock here. I think that was the Probe, which allowed Max to draw a couple of cards, then discard some cards. He did not pay the kicker on it. He's kind of stuck at 3 mana here, unfortunately. With a huge board presence on Francis' side. I don't know if Max can dig himself out of this one. We saw the Altasaur go off. It only found a Wild Growth, so it wasn't a huge play, but the Altasaur does have relevant text, being a 6/5. Max really in the tank here, looking at his hand, trying to see if he can do anything to not die next turn. Maybe he can bounce the Altasaur, but that's just more value for Francis, so he packs it up and moves to game 2 here. We see him start out with a God Pharaoh's Faithful. This 0/4 is really good at blocking, and it also mitigates a lot of that chip damage that you see from early game Pauper players, or Pauper games, with these 1/1s and 2/2s. So every time that he casts a spell in his deck, besides white, he's gaining a life. Get a couple of these in play, and the Esper Familiars deck can really just stay on top of their life total and get out of range of any aggro deck here. Oh boy, we see the Thermokarst deployed. So this being a green Stone Rain, and if it's a snow-covered land, you can even gain a life from it. So Max getting really set back pretty far with that one, getting the bounce land destroyed. But I guess he's not too upset by it. We see him just play his planes and pass. Flipping over this Foretold card, the Sarulf's Packmate, just a 3/3, gets to draw a card when it enters the battlefield. Being able to split up the ability of paying for it, 2 mana now, 2 mana later, makes it a lot easier to swallow. So we see another Foretell and an Arbor Elf. Arbor Elf is going to catch that Memory Lapse. We do see the Sunscape Familiar in play. So Max being where he wants to be, an Archaeomancer discounted, buying back the Memory Lapse that he can fire off again. Another Packmate. These 3/3s do have pretty relevant power, but I think they can be caught, can't be blocked by the Familiar, but can be blocked by the Faithful, not die to that. All right, I think we saw a Packmate return to hand, or put on top of the library, fired off that that Memory Lapse. Then we see a Probe here, drawing some cards, have to discard some cards. Deciding what he's going to discard. It looks like Francis may be a little mana screwed here, not drawing nearly as much mana as he had in that first game. The Arbor Elf allowing him to generate 4 mana by being able to untap that Wild Growth Forest, though, which is going to get an Acid Moss. We're going to see an Ephemerate, which is going to buy back a Memory Lapse, and that is enough for Francis to say, I don't think I'm getting myself out of this. We're going to game 3. Real quick start here. Francis Arbor Elf and Llanowar Visionary deployed for turns 1 and 2. Max not doing a whole lot. Just a Terramorphic Expanse to get the correct land that he wants. Pass his turn. Looks like Francis has access to 4 to 5 mana right now if he has a land drop. Decides to untap. Doesn't want to play into the Memory Lapse. Decides instead of 4 mana, he's only going to tap 3. And he's going to deploy the Thermokarst, blowing up the blue. Plays the Llanowar, or the Arbor Elf, and the red-green tap land. All right, we're seeing a boarding party here. So Cascades into a Utopia Sprawl. So not the best thing that Francis wanted to see, but he does have a 6/3 with haste now, crashing in there. And mana ramp is not bad, especially when you have 2 Arbor Elves in play, effectively doubling your mana. We see the Nightscape Familiar deployed. This isn't the perfect colors, but it is blue spells, which is the relevant color that Max wants to have the cost reduction to. 3 of these in the deck and 4 of the Sunscape Familiar. This one a little bit more fragile. It does have Regenerate, but rather have that big butt than the power and toughness. See another boarding party deployed and another, well, a Wild Growth coming in. I think another Utopia Sprawl. So that Arbor Elf being able to untap and generate 4 mana off of that 1 forest. Oh boy, that was just a huge play. We saw the Pyroblast, and that just negated everything that Max had, and he packs it up, and that is the end of game 3. So as we saw here, Francis just had a little bit too much value for Max to be able to deal with all on the same turn, and just got outvalued. Thanks as always for tuning in to the channel. I always appreciate you stopping by. If this is your first time here, why don't you give us a like if you like what you're seeing, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Thanks as always to Spellhold Games for allowing us to record the content in their store. And finally, if you haven't already, have a great day. And just to let you know, the next video on the channel is going to be a Legacy Blue-White Stoneblade versus Jeskai Standstill. We'll see you then.